Serious people who enter other people's homes as a part of your job, maintenance workers, etc. What's the weirdest thing you've seen inside someone's home? I used to install smoke alarms for the hearing impaired, 50% elderly and 50% deaf, all over the state of Oklahoma. I would get addresses for the installations the week before and plan routes accordingly, meaning I would just put the addresses into Google and check out the Earth/map views. This place I'm thinking of was in the middle of nowhere, which is saying something considering that the entire state of Oklahoma is in the middle of nowhere. When my ASL interpreter and I made the trip, we had to ram our minivan over a nearly washed out bridge, bounce down a forest road, and choose which of 3 broken down trailers these people were using as shelter. Looking back, we really should have just called it before amping the bridge. Once there, we met the people and they explained in ASL through my interpreter that they had a tornado rip through their home that ended up sparking a fire somehow. That explanation never made it through translation. Since then they had decided to be more fire safety conscious, which I applaud, but their home had holes in the roof the size of people. One wall was just a tapestry of duct tape trash bags. I didn't feel right just installing fancy smoke alarms when they clearly needed much more help. But there wasn't anything I could do. So I'm doing the only thing I can do, installing smoke alarms, explaining basic fire safety, teaching them to use their bed shaking devices. These folks were deaf, and when I start to explain that they should exit the home without stopping to grab anything including pets, they stop me and explain that their pet is very valuable, as in it had a monetary value. I'm not one to pry, so I took this at face value and reiterated the importance of leaving the home immediately if it is on fire, especially because it's a trailer home. They had a long silent conversation with my interpreter during which she looked more and more concerned. The occupants go into a room I hadn't yet entered and emerge with a freaking bald eagle on a leash. Shit's illegal, yo. This lady had 7 huge birds, parrots, etc. all without cages and shooting directly onto the floor. It only had the pad that goes under carpet and everything had seeped through. It was horrible. She just got a German Shepherd puppy also, and then proceeded to show me her machete collection. Had a dope ass classic Airstream in the backyard though. My co-worker called animal control on her, but we ended up closing her case shortly after, so not sure whatever happened. So this isn't weird, but it was the most shocking. I was working with adults with intellectual disabilities that lived in residential homes. It was one of my first weeks in the job and a co-worker was taking me out to a home to show me what she did when she did home reviews. We get to the house, open the door, and we are instantly hit with a wall of air smelling like feces. 2 steps in, and it was apparent there was diarrhea on a chair, on the carpet, and random splotches all over. The whole house was in shambles. The fridge was full of moldy foods, and I'll never forget picking up the shredded cheese, shaking the bag, and seeing green mold flakes go up and down. Food was splattered all over the cabinets, the beds were stained with urine and feces, and expired canned food was found everywhere. The staff there had been neglecting those guys for a long time and no one had bothered to check up on them. I do construction sales, so I'm in homes a lot. For me, it's the sheer number of preppers that exist today. Walk into a suburban America basement and bam, 2 dozen buckets full of survival food, or ammo stuffed into every alcove and rafter. It's definitely not just the ones you expect. I worked as a delivery driver for a deliver anything company in the early 2000s. At the time it was a very novel, but ultimately unsustainable idea for a business back th. We had a lot of regular weirdos. One night one of these weirdos ordered about $30 worth of candles from the dollar store. This job really brought to the forefront the disconnects that exist in us as consumers. So of course initially I had gotten the wrong kind of candles for the weirdo. He showed me what he wanted at his apartment door. Luckily the store was literally a couple blocks away, so I didn't have to waste much time, because I wasn't being paid hourly. Come in was what I was greeted with when I returned, which is never something I'm particularly happy about as a delivery person. I see what my rational brain tells me is a pile of laundry on a coffee table in front of a filthy couch. But it's not that. It's a 3-foot tall wax pile. I had bought candles in jars the first time, and I could definitely see why those would not work for our gentleman. He needed freestanding candles. so he could just plop one down and light it to continue building his wax mountain, which was starting to spill onto the floor. A less weird, but more awkward experience I had with this man was him literally falling asleep mid-signature for his Burger King. I had a neighbor who offered me money to clean her apartment. She had mental health issues and got some kind of subsidy from the county for home assistance, which she didn't like, but she had an inspection coming up for continuing her other benefits. So I walked in and there were dishes everywhere, glasses with dried stuff in the bottom, pizza boxes that smelled of old cheese in stacks, ashtrays piled so high they were pyramids of butts, beer cans and bottles scattered. Went into the kitchen and both sinks are piled up past the faucet. One side has water in it that's covered in a white film. The kitchen trash can had overflowed to the floor and has flies buzzing around it. Gross, but I needed the money, so I rolled up my sleeves and got to work. After I got the dishes under control, I moved on to the stove/off. When I opened the door, the entire bottom of the oven was crawling with maggots. The wave of smell was enough to about knock me on my ass, and I ran out gagging. Went home, got a mask, went back and finished cleaning up. I still cannot figure out what she did to that of there was no food inside and looked like it had never been used. I don't know if I could really peg one thing as the weirdest, but collectively it sure as hell was. The entire main floor had drains in every room, because they thought it would be easier to hose their house down to clean it. The bathroom had a shower that you had to hold a button on the down for water to come out. There was no end to height. Instead, the master bedroom had the tub and toilet right in it, with the toilet facing the bed. The tub was a massive jacuzzi, but with a kitchen tap for a faucet so it couldn't fill up quickly enough to stay warm. Oh, and the house was filled with naked picture of the homie owner. On one occasion we were demolishing a kitchen for a remodel and found, sealed inside the wall, 5 empty beers and 1 full one. Service plumber here. At the house of an elderly lady at least 75 years old, and there's naked pictures of her on all the walls and several dildos all about. It was interesting. As a maintenance guy at a large apartment complex, I've seen some shoot naked people, really gross people, but thank God no dead people. I remember doing an emergency water repair and had to go into an occupied unit. It was the strangest thing. It was pretty much empty, dirty but empty, like no one lives there, no furniture. Not even a bed, just a shitty mattress on the floor. And some clothes scattered around. And at least 30 pairs of Nike shoes, all sorts of weird colors. Like this guy had no TV or couch, but had a collection of expensive shoes. All the same size from what I could tell. IDK, it wasn't as bad as a few hoarder units we had. Yeah, this is a thing. I've known a few people who I'm sure live this way. Nothing to do, so they are always out in town. No apparent income, no hobbies. But they look fresh as hell every time they go out. Doesn't seem like something I'd want to do, but I guess there are worse things to do with your time than dressing nice and having social interactions. I was on a ride along with the fire department. We responded to smell of smoke in an apartment building. We found the apartment fast enough because the fire alarm was going off inside. We walk in to find this guy naked as the day he was born, passed out on the floor in front of the TV with pronoun on way louder than it should be, and the remnants of a pizza in the edit. Thanks for the silver, guys. Okay, to answer some questions. The gentleman I questioned was very drunk. There were beer cans all over the kitchen and a bottle of liquor on the floor next to him. To wake him up we actually all left, and the fire chief woke him in his daily uniform, so he didn't think he was being abducted. Lastly, this was in Fargo, North Dakota about 14 years ago. Checking fire alarms / testing emergency bedside buttons in a nursing home that are like individual little apartments. Opened the door to stench of death and sure enough, lady dead on the bed. Been there about 2 days. So I wasn't expecting so many responses, but to answer some questions. Yes, the bedside button worked fine. No, nobody was in trouble for her not being found for 2 days. This specific place is very independent. They have their own cars and are free to come and go as they please. And the only time someone comes by is for any sort of maintenance or if they have visitors stop by. Worked as a furniture delivery guy for a rent to own place in Iowa for a couple of years, and I saw some absolutely crazy shoot. We were delivering a couch to someone, and when we arrived there was no answer to our knocking. We called our manager back at the store and explained that no one was home. He tells us to hang out for a minute while he tries getting in touch with the customer. While we are waiting, we start hearing this weird sort of screeching sound coming from a detached garage. We decided to investigate the noise. We turned the corner to the front of the garage and came face to face with the meanest, scariest looking monkey I've ever seen. It was in the garage, but they had like this wire fence keeping it inside. The entire garage was its cage. In the middle of BFE, IA. I have no idea what type of monkey it was. It was large and very angry. Years ago I used to deliver and set up furniture of all sorts. Not that weird, but I used to find vibrators and dildos under mattresses all the friggin' time. I would stand the mattress up against the wall, and they'd be laid out there. I'd simply tell the homie owner I gotta grab some tools from the truck. If there's anything you need to clean up, no W is the time to do it. I'd come back in, and the 6 toys would be gone. Every time. And they would never say a word about it. It wasn't a big deal. I just didn't want to handle them. If the homie owner was home, they would be a little embarrassed, said no eye contact, red cheeks, etc, but I'd like to think I handled it as professionally as possible, given the fact I was 17 to 20 years old. Cleaning a huge condo for a wealthy book publisher, the owner felt that cats were sacred, so they had suspended walkways through the entire 6k square foot condo for the 2 cats to walk on, so they could move through every room without having to touch the floor. Additionally, every 12 feet or so in each room, they had a cat balcony the cats could sit on made out of real crystal. We weren't allowed to touch them as they were valued at $10,000 a piece. I know someone who did something like this, but not to that extreme. They were building their dream house, which included underfloor ducts and vents for the AX system. Since they were going to be doing that already, they had the builder install a completely separate set of ducts and vents just for the cats, so they could move from room to room and inside/outside as they pleased. Apparently the cats had a habit of falling asleep in hidden areas of rooms, waking up to find the door closed, then whining till someone let them out. This solved that issue, though I will say it was kind of disconcerting to be in a room where you knew there were no cats, only to have one suddenly pop up out of the floor to say hi, including in the bathroom. Edit. If it makes anyone feel any better, the house had about a 5 to 7 foot crawl space underneath. It was built on a ridge line. They lived in the desert, so it stayed dry and non-icky like some crawl spaces, and each of the segments and junctions of the cat ducts had access doors. A fake. They never had any issues with the cats vomiting or crapping in the ducts, but they did have one instance where their big orange tomcat killed a jackrabbit, dragged it into his favorite hangout junction box, proceeded to eat the entire thing, and then was too fat to fit out through any of the room vents. That time they did have to go under the house and use the access door to rescue him. Used to work for a concrete company, and our mixer trucks would sometimes damage property. Typically my partner and I did maintenance on the plants, but we'd get sent to job sites to unfrig whatever the drivers did. So while at one house, we had to tear up the driveway, replace the culvert and repair the end of the driveway. The first day we were there, all the old Snoopy neighbors were standing around watching us, and I had to piss pretty bad. So I asked the homie owner if I could use his bathroom. He said sure, and led me through his house, past a bathroom, into the bathroom in the master bedroom. Already creeped out by that. Oh, also I noticed cameras all over the place. Some pointed out windows, some pointed into the rooms. Creep factor leveled up. So he leads me to the bathroom, opens the door and holds it for me, like you would at a store when someone is behind you. I say thanks. He still stands there. I had to walk past him and yank the door closed. While leaving, I notice a bedroom decked out in kid stuff. This would normally not toss up any flags. Grandkids room probably. Right, but with all the added creepiness, it just didn't seem normal at all. Told my partner, he laughed and pointed out there was probably cameras in the bathroom. If either of us had to piss after that, we drove down to the gas station. Edit time for clarification, so this was around 15 years ago. We are talking camcorders on tripods, not your cutesy nanny cams. Old guy was single, and this wasn't a very kid-friendly setup as far as foster homes go. The part about him holding the door for the bathroom, imagine going to a restaurant and there's a group of people with you and you hold the door open for them. This was what I was talking about. Except he didn't seem to have any intentions on closing it, hence me snatching it from him. I was an estate agent realtor for rental properties, and I had a few wild moments. Top 2 were when I had been okayed by a member of male couple to let myself in for a flat viewing one Saturday morning. But he must have forgotten to tell his boyfriend/husband, because when I opened the door to the bedroom with my M/F middle-aged couple, we found one of the tenants having a vigorous affair against the wall without a stitch on them, and only 5 feet away. Still no idea how we didn't hear them before we opened the door. The other one was similar, but I was there to take photos and the tenant, an elderly and overweight woman, forgot I was coming, so guess I found in the bath. Similar, I was tasked with entering every room in a small hotel to verify dimensions for an architectural project. One room, 2 men who looked like they're from the 80s, clearly doing some sort of business, computers, printers, filing cabinets. But there was also some serious pronoun on the TV, like hardcore penetration, and it was just background noise. So weird. Back in the early 90s, I worked for a company that removed old electric water heaters and replaced them with propane-powered water heaters. Because propane water heaters can possibly spew carbon monoxide, there are state regulations as to where the water heaters can and can't be placed. So it was my job to inspect the water heater room and draw up plans for ventilation, if necessary. I showed up at a client's home to inspect the area where he had his water heater to see if we needed to install any vents. When I asked to see his current water heater, he seemed a little uncomfortable and said, "I have something in the room that I forgot to clean up." I followed him to the room, and when he opened the door, the smell of weed hit me. In the water heater room, he had fishing lines strung up with trimmed plants being dried. If I were to guess, there must have been a couple pounds of weed drying in there. He said, "Oops, sorry about that." I smiled and told him, "No problem. I don't even know what that is." I knew exactly what it was, but I didn't want the guy to get worried about me telling someone. He offered me some, but I told him, "No thanks. I don't know what that is." As I was leaving, he asked me, "You aren't going to tell anyone about the plants, are you?" I asked, "What plants?" The guy smiled, then said, "You sure you don't want some?" I definitely wanted some, but I was still pretty new at my job, so I didn't want to take the chance that accepting weed from him would blow up in my face. Before I left, I told him, "Make sure you clear that closet before our guys arrive. They might not be happy about the plants I didn't see." In the bathroom, thought I saw a giant pink dildo. Closer look revealed it was penis-shaped soap. Wasn't inside their home, but outside. I was on hurricane relief in the mountains of New York. We had to go and supply water to this guy, whose house was deep in the woods. His property was surrounded by trees, and hanging from those trees were a bunch of black baby dolls from nooses. There was a wooden archway as you approached his house that said "Arbeit Macht frei," which means work sets you free. That was on the entrance to Auschwitz. Years ago I drove a tow truck at nights, putting myself through college. Got a call to go get this woman's car. I pull up, and she's in the car, and won't get out. I ask her, "Ma'am, to please get out, so I can safely tow your vehicle without you in it." She said that's never going to happen. I said it's an insurance violation for me to let you ride in your car. It's late, so I said screw it. "Ma'am, please move to the passenger seat so I can put your car in neutral and steer it up on the flatbed." She complies. I get in the car and she says I can't leave them alone in here. I'm like, who? I turn around and there is no joke 30+ cats in the back of this old station wagon. Every single one of them in some sort of Halloween costume. The car smelled worse than anything I've ever encountered in my life. Edited. I guess this counts as a home, since the crazy cat lady was living in her car. In the home winner in this story had my bachelorette party. My friends got my a blow up 6 doll and put my fiance's face on it. They then handcuffed it to me and put a bunch of fake tattoos on it. After the party I threw it in my basement. Electrician came and saw it. I'm not sure if he wanted to laugh or if he thought I was a giant weirdo. Oh, and my husband was the one who was home who had to look him in the eyes. I used to work at a junk hauling company just out of high school. Think 1800 got junk from the hoarders show. We got a call for a couch disposal and showed up at the house. Lady that answered the door was a little strange. We went inside to a gloomy apartment with no lights on and floor to ceiling rabbit cages. There must have been 20 plus cages in her front room alone. All the floors were covered with sawdust and rabbits were everywhere. The whole place, as you would expect, smelled horrible and flies were everywhere. We walked to the back room, saw the couch just covered in rabbit shit and some lady sitting in a chair in the corner who never said a word to us. We stepped outside, called out boss and said we weren't going back in without hazmat suits and got the hell out of there. I was a firefighter for 15 years. One time the code enforcement department called us to assist with condemning a house. The smell was so strong from the street that they knew we needed air packs to enter. The owners were moved to the nursing home and left their dogs behind. Instead of doing anything about it, their daughter just kept throwing bags of dog food in the door periodically. There were 4 generations of inbred dogs in that house, ranging from still nursing puppies to 40-pound adults. I think the final count was in the low 20s when animal control got them all rounded up. There was a decomposing cat body. The feces was literally inches thick on the floor and splattered knee-high up the walls. You could see the fleas crawling on one guy's khaki pants when he came out. The daughter ended up getting well-deserved animal neglect charges out of it. I think the house got torn down. The weirdest part was the family portraits and knickknacks still on the walls and furniture, like they had just left. Some people's basement bars blow my mind. One 80-year-old had a bar in his basement that looked straight out to 1958 Western Cantina. I loved it. My father is a firefighter. They have regular calls to a man's apartment for disturbances, suspected medical distress, cries for help, the works. His name is ironically Norm, and he's a regular call for them. Norm is clearly mentally ill, but that doesn't change the fact that he has a freaking weird apartment. My dad says that Norm's apartment walls are covered floor to ceiling in egg cartons that are hot glued on. You cannot see an inch of wall in any room. Each night, he seals doors and windows in his unit with toothpaste, and my dad says that the dried toothpaste around the doors and windows is easily 4 inches thick. Norm says these are protective measures to keep evil spirits out. The last call my dad responded to was that Norm had lit his TV on fire and threw it out the window of his 5th floor unit. I suppose this was before his nightly toothpaste ritual. There was a cardboard box with a TV drawn on it sitting on the entertainment unit when they arrived. My dad also says that every time they've been there is a single beet boiling in a pot on the stove. I really don't know how this man is allowed to live on his own, or how he hasn't been evicted. Dicks. Dicks everywhere. Sculptures and artwork of decks literally about 1,000, like a hoarder type situation. I was doing their cable and you really couldn't avoid contact with a deck or two. It was dark and there from the skyscraper stacks of CCKS blocking out the light. I had to work in a government housing block at Main and Hastings in Vancouver. I was cutting a hole in a ceiling while someone was laying on a dirty mattress right beside the ladder injecting heroin. The person was so fricked up that he didn't even notice all the drywall dust I was spilling on him. I was a plumber going through college. While in training I went to an abandoned home that was being bought by a home owner. They were trying to use their home warranty system. We entered the house to find that it had been used by squatters until a few weeks previous. The sink was literally overflowing with garbage and mold. The bathroom was also quite literally overflowing with shit. They didn't have any water, but apparently kept taking dumps in the toilet, to the point where it was all over the floor around the toilet. The bathtub and the wall next to the bathtub was covered in mold and shit. Needles all over the place. We took one look at all of it and left. Other than that, I've seen all the stuff you'd normally expect. Hoarders, weed houses, hot moms who want their pipes fixed with a big wrench. But the squatter's house was the worst and weirdest. I do property management for multi-millionaires, one of which has a plaque in her house from when she sold her shares in a company in excess of $50 million. It's not as strange as a lot of the comments here, but it always creeped me out. Her house is extremely nice, right on the beach, but it's a pretty old house. Inside everything is pretty old, from the furniture to the wallpaper. She has an abundance of creepy ass pictures dating back to the 1800s on her walls, on her tables. Even cup holders have creepy looking people on the bottom, where you put your cup. I imagine it's all old pictures of her family, but it's really bizarre. She also has really old dolls that look creepy as shoot, some of them resembling Annabelle from the movie. She has probably 3 to 4 in every room in her 5,000 plus square feet house. I hate going in there.